entire research, which is an initiative of SPJIMR's Center for Family Business and Entrepreneurship. We seek to initiate and nurture research-based conversations in the fascinating and yet complex topic of family businesses and entrepreneurship. So our speaker for today, our first set of speakers were Maria and Fernando. We did a series with them in November, if I'm right. Is that right, Dhanashree? November 8th, I think we started it off. And we plan to have a set of such conversations once every 2 months. So our speaker for today is Josip. I'm sure Josip needs not much introduction. He's a full professor of strategy, innovation, and family business at the School of Management of the Politecnico di Milano, founder of the Innovation and Strategy Research Group and member of the Scientific Committee and Energy and Strategy. His research areas, which I'm sure many of us are very familiar with, address pressing questions in strategy and innovation management, focusing primarily on family businesses and entrepreneurial topics. On these topics, he has published more than 50 articles in international academic journals, receiving more than 7,000 citations, numerous awards, and frequent mentions in the media. He's also the associate editor of FBR, Family Business Review, and president of the IFERA, which is the International Family Enterprise Research Academy, where he fosters global collaboration and knowledge exchange among family business researchers. At Politecnico di Milano, he has founded the Observatory's Family Office and Open Innovation Lookout. His work aims to help entrepreneurs, families, managers, and professionals to develop strategies that leverage innovation to create value for the long term. So without much ado, I invite Josip to speak on the topic of the day, bringing the family to the spotlight, an agenda for research on enterprising families and family offices.
Thank you, Tulsi. Very nice introduction, too much, of course, so too kind. Very nice to see you all. I see there are some friends here that I already know. I see Natalia. Hi, Natalia. And nice seeing you again. And Maria Jose Sanchez Bueno. So it's great to see you all. And of course, for the new friends, I'm also very glad to meet you, albeit online. I hope to meet you again. We are having our IFERA conference this summer in June in beautiful Lisbon. So for any of you who will be able to join us, you will meet in person. It will be a great pleasure. Tulsi has kindly invited me to share some insights about my research and share with you guys some ideas, especially about what there might be, for us as family business researchers in the future as a potential opportunities and interesting area to explore. And I suggested this title because, as Tulsi mentioned earlier, I am working for the last 3 years. I've been involved in some research about family offices. It's not just family offices, it's a broader area of research, which I'm finding extremely fascinating and very promising. And that's what I want to share with you, a view of what do we mean by family entrepreneurship and what might be the new frontiers of research in this area. So I prepared a few slides. I will go through some contents and of course, I really want to engage with you. So I will try to save some time for Q&A at the end. Let me share my screen. Now you should see it. Okay. So here we go. Let me just highlight a couple of context aspects as well. I don't know all of you, so some of you might be more or less versed and aware of where we are with family business as a field. We know that major developments have been made. Tulsi, you remember this slide? We show it together with you, with your students, just a few weeks ago. And the idea is really that we are lucky today on one side because family business has become a legitimate and institutionalized field of research. We see our papers, our research being published in virtually all management research journals, and not only, also in economics, in finance, and related fields. And also we see more and more prominence of family businesses in major academic conferences, and also, which again highlights the prominence of our field. But let me also say that from 1990 until today, 30 years have passed. I completed my PhD program in 2012, so 12 years ago. And I remember well that that was already very different phase of our research compared to today. So I believe today as a field, we are looking for something new, for something that refreshes and reestablishes the importance of family business scholarship and also inspires new ideas. But of course, we need to do that in coherence with what was done so far. No? So I would start definitely from citing some of my most influential scholars, at least for my career, Jess Chua, Jim Krisman, Pramodita Sharma, who wrote this definition about family firms in 1999, which I believe is still valid today. Because it speaks about a business which is governed and or managed with intention to shape and pursue the vision of the business, in a way that can contribute to the sustainability of the family and to the wellness of the family over time. But at the same time, I think that we should try to expand this definition, because as of present, we look at the family business and family entrepreneurship within the family firm, which means we are very much concerned about these gray areas, according to Davies' model, where we study intersections between the family and the ownership and management of their business. Whereas I believe that something is changing. Something is changing in Italy, and I will show you some data from Italy, but I believe that similar trends can be observed all around the world. And you will tell me how you see them in your context. Well, what I hear is that more and more family firms, as they grow, as they develop, they typically encounter common issues. Issues that relate to the dilution of the initial purpose, of the initial values of the founding generation, the loss of entrepreneurial spirit, of leadership, of emotional attachment, growing conflict, growing within the family and also between the family and the business. In a way, there is a loss of identity. There has been a long discussion between several scholars about whether social-emotional wealth, for example, increases or decreases over time. Yet, we look at that within the family business. And sometimes the family business, the legacy business, the core business of the family does not have anymore that central role in a family portfolio of wealth as it used to be before. So this is just some data from Italy. And I think I want to check with you if you have the same impression also in your country and your countries. Well, I collected the data from different liquidity events, which means when a family sells the family business, either fully or partially. So these are all equity exit operations in Italy in the last 10 years. You might notice that, of course, we had some decrease. For example, 2020 with COVID, there was a little bit of a lower number, but generally the trend is huge, is hugely positive. We find that in 1 year, if you look at 2013-14 and 2021-22, the number of these events has tripled, right? Has become threefold bigger. So just in the last year, we had more than 400 companies, actually, almost 400 companies, family firms being sold in Italy. At the same time, it's interesting to look at the money value of these operations. You see, we have a total disclosed value, which is 140 billion euro, and the projected, because we don't know the value for every single deal, the projection is up to 300 billion in 10 years. This, just in Italy, to give you an idea, is basically almost 10 times bigger than any capital raise of Italian companies. So it's a huge amount of money and a big portion of wealth which is freed by family businesses and moved into liquidity.
Josip, can you just explain these terms which are in Italian?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry. The blue side is those operations with companies being sold or equity being sold for a value more than 10 million euro. The green are the smaller ones, so less than 10 million euro operation, but the big portion, the pink ones, we don't know the value. We just know that the operation was executed, but we don't know what was the correct, because they are private firms, so they don't need to declare what was the amount.
Of liquidity. Okay, all right.
So,
got it.
No, thank you, Tulsi. It's a good question, because that means that we used the blue and green numbers to project the total value of 3 billion. Or 300 billion. So just to give you a little bit of a methodological side of it. But the key point is that money, wealth, which was invested into family businesses, suddenly becomes liquid, right? Suddenly becomes free money. And now the question is how to keep a family together over time. No, all of the issues that I mentioned before become more and more severe, obviously, as you don't have the family business, in the middle. There is a famous story here that I like to share. Do you know maybe the family Peugeot of the automaker, the car maker, famous car maker from
Peugeot.
France,
Yes,
Peugeot?
Peugeot. Yeah.
You might not know that Peugeot was not founded as a car making company.
Okay.
They were founded as a company producing salt and pepper dispensers. You know, the little things that you find at the center of the table. Now, obviously, that has become, is still alive. That core family business is still alive. So, together with some of my colleagues, we are working on these topics. We asked the family, why do they keep this, you might imagine, very small, not very profitable business in their portfolio? And they said it's a metaphor in which they say, as long as we have our salt and pepper on the table, the family will stay together. No, because having a legacy core family business, really, it's something that brings people together and also gives you, let's say, a field of operations where the family can work. I use this example because once you lose this kind of, no, when we have this kind of phenomena of sale or exit from the family, suddenly the family is left with no center of gravity. No, so a new challenge arises in order to understand basically what will be the future of the family. I see there are some questions in the chat. I would suggest that I take questions at the end, unless there is something, as Tulsi just made, which is absolutely fine, of clarification. Of course, I'm happy to come back to any slide, but just for the sake of keeping the logic flow of the speech. Now, if we believe that families are changing, that more and more families, enterprising families, will operate without or with a less central family business in their portfolio, I believe that we need to take a major shift in our perspective as to how we study and how we understand family firms. So we typically study management. We typically study the family firm. This is the agency framework where we understand that the managers are those who administer the assets. Principals, owners are those only who make investments. And any one of you who is studying family business knows well that actually family owners, regardless of whether they are or not involved in management, they actually make a big contribution to major firm decisions. These are the guys, in the end, who make the big decisions. They are those who develop and update the long-term vision. They are the ones actually selecting the best managers, choosing the big moves of the company to sell, to merge, to acquire major technologies, or also to define the governance system that works for the family business, for the family, and for all other stakeholders. So, with this, I really want to say we need to move family owners, even more than family managers and employees, at the spotlight and understand better what is that makes them unique investors, unique operators on the financial markets. And not only, of course, also in relation to the companies and the assets they own. Some years ago, I had the fortune of having a meeting with some of my advisors, colleagues, friends who I do a lot of research with, De Massis, Alfredo, Chua, Jess, Chrisman, Jim. And we sat down and we discussed and reflected about what is that we are learning together collectively that might make an entrepreneurial family really successful over the long run. So I want to share with you some ideas about what I believe are the central pillars of success for the family enterprise and even more for the entrepreneurial family over time. The goals, which means the willingness, what drives the intention to stay together, and what are the economic and non-economic goals that are relevant to the family. the governance, right? How do you govern the system of the ownership system, the management system, the board of directors, and all the governance issues that emerge at the family level as well, the family council, family office. I will come back to that. And the resources, right? Because obviously, for ensuring long-term sustainability of these enterprising families, we need to understand what are the resources that they have, what are the resources that they miss, and how do they collaborate with externals also to gain access to critical resources for the success of their businesses, but also of the family as a whole. So here, probably you all know this, so just let me repeat it briefly. This is the contribution of Gomez Mejia and his colleagues, who I mentioned here the Academy of Management Annals paper, which summarizes the research about social emotional wealth. What we learn from this literature is that families have a broader set of goals in their portfolio. So they really have the traditional financial value goals, but also they have social and emotional aspects of goals. And now it is interesting to know this, not only, I mean, we have studied social emotional wealth in the family business, but think about how much important social emotional wealth might be even more, right, at the level of the family. So how do families define their goals? How do they create the match between financials and non-financials? And how do they apply different goals and allocate different goals to different entities? The second is, what are those entities? Well, if you think about resources for a family, for an enterprising family, resources come from multiple sources, multiple places. We have existing companies, the holding company, there's a larger, the smaller company, and each of them has some assets and some resources. There are maybe ideas for future resources, right? For example, there might be ideas for new real estate investments, for new financial investments, for new philanthropic investments, right? And all of these future companies will become part of the portfolio of assets of the family. And then obviously we need to consider very deeply also the intangible and the cultural assets, right? Intangible assets such as the history, the education, the events that create a bond within the family members, and also contribute to nurturing non-economic goals. And the cultural context, which is very important for the resources, because family firms and families create very tight relationship with their context, so that they are able really to interact with the context, with the territory, with the community, in order to what? To detect and identify resources which are useful for cross-generational sustainability. The memory, the story of entrepreneurship, of ethics, values, feelings. There is a family I work with here in Italy, which is very famous because they have enabled, it's a banking company in the banking sector, it's a family-owned private bank, which has supported many family entrepreneurs in the region where they are located to stimulate new entrepreneurial ventures. And now some of these ventures became very famous. Maybe you know some of them. One is Zegna, Ermenegildo Zegna, luxury brand. Another one is Fila, which is the company, the sports apparel company. And if you look at them, they are all positioned in the surroundings of this major hub, which is actually has invested into these companies, has supported these entrepreneurs, and today, right, benefits of being part of that entrepreneurial ecosystem. And then the governance, of course. The governance is important because it evolves over time. And so far we understand, let's say, family business governance until the second stage, sibling, partnership, causing consortium, whereas still we can manage governance in a unitary way. But what happens when the family starts having multiple businesses? When the ownership group becomes very multifaceted, with smaller groups, larger groups, alliances? After all, we all know family firms which have more than 50, 60, sometimes more than 100 family shareholders. Not to think about other shareholders, sometimes even other families who co-invest together into the business. So we need to expand the boundaries of our interest into a broad set of new organizations that really contribute to the governance of the family council, the family foundation, the family offices, Then also I found some families having a family academy or family museums, family trusts, a family holdings company, which are created for different purposes. So I think, returning to my first point, if we look at the three-circle model, which is extremely useful, of course, to analyze a family business, it becomes very narrow and limiting as we want to understand more fully family entrepreneurship as a topic. This is an article that I wrote together with Alfredo De Massis and Luca Manelli just a couple of years ago. And I think, I hope it is useful to move this perspective, moving from the three circles from the left to a much more complex figure, which, however, in our view, highlights some new questions and new dilemmas. In this framework, I put the family, the enterprising family, at the very center. At the very center because this is the unit of analysis that you want to understand. And on the around the family, I put the different assets they have. One might be the family business, another one might be a foundation, another might be just an investment of the family, right? And there might be many of these. For each of them, the family will create a system of governance, of ownership and management, which sometimes is fully managed by the family and owned. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the family might only have ownership. Sometimes maybe the family only has management. Think about philanthropic activities where the family members might only want to join as a manager, as a board member, but don't have ownership of that. I know many families who do that. Now, it becomes interesting to see that now there are flows of wealth between the family and each of these assets, right? Each of them will require some investments and return some wealth to the family in different compositions, in different configurations. At the same time, we start being interested also in resource flows between the different assets of the family. Think about a family which has a foundation, a philanthropic or a cultural foundation. Obviously, the foundation also benefits from money, maybe donations that come from a business, right? So there might be resource flows from a business to a philanthropic foundation. But also the philanthropic foundation creates a reputation for the family, which goes back and creates resources for the business. So here, a little bit of a definition that we report and analyze of different kind of organizations. We call these organizations broadly family boundary organizations. Why? Because they are at the boundary between the family and the assets they own. Well, family firm is certainly one of those organizations. We already have the definition and a lot of research about them. Family foundations, it's a type of private foundation that operates with the hands-on involvement of an active donor or a donor family. There are very few articles about family foundations so far. I have developed one article in Family Business Review which speaks about social legacies in foundations. There are some other works. I know that Inan Sasaki, I know that Peter Jaskevitz, I know that Roy Sadabi are working on similar topics. But so far, I don't know, how many research papers are out there really about foundations. Not many. There are differences between a family foundation and family business foundation because it depends on who is the owner. It might be directly the family or the family business. We don't know what are the differences, what are the specificities of doing one or the other approach to foundations. Family offices are becoming very popular today. They are organizations that are dedicated to provide tailored and holistic services to the family. Sometimes they are mostly investment vehicles, sometimes they are more philanthropic vehicles, sometimes they do multiple things. And only few studies have started addressing this topic. Nadine Kammerlander has done some work on family offices, some more recent work by Schickinger, some work traditionally Diane Welsh has worked a lot in this area, Dennis Jaffe has worked on this topic. But again, we are talking about no more than 10 articles. And think about it, family offices are huge force in the world economics.
family holding companies, family academies, family museums. Each of them, I believe, has the legitimacy and also the need to be studied in more depth, to understand to a deeper extent how these organizations by themselves represent a unique form of a family-owned organization, and how do they differ from other comparable organizations in the respective sectors. You see, each of these organizations has very unique goals, purposes, if you want. They have the function of preserving, administering, and transforming assets of the family to support the accomplishment of broader goals. They facilitate collaboration between the family and the different stakeholders in each asset. And again, as I mentioned before, they operate at the boundary. They operate really between the family and the asset. For that reason, I think there are very new questions that are emerging, which are very interesting to explore in family business scholarship. Efficiency, just to mention one. Efficiency means how does the family coordinate and make decisions about what to own and what to manage, and where instead they need external delegation and external professionals to run the work. What are the developments of agency theory, transaction cost theories applied to the context of different boundary organizations? That's, I think, a very interesting question. Power. Obviously, when you have multiple entities, multiple assets, different governance system, there is a big question about who is in power and how is power exercised in these large constellations of family-owned enterprises or family business groups, right? So power means understanding the formal relationship within the family, the formal relationship between the family and the asset classes, but also I believe there is a lot of interest here to understand the subtle and not formalized dynamics of power in such a setting, in such a constellation of family-owned assets. Another big topic is all about competencies. What is the level of professionalization needed in each of these asset classes? But also, what are the competencies that families need to administer the system as a whole? We today speak a lot about new professional profiles. I heard about in America, in North America, some professionals doing the job of selecting service providers for families to administer different sources of wealth, to manage a foundation rather than a trust, rather than a new entrepreneurial investment. There are a very broad set of consultants and advisors who are supporting these families in making those decisions that are essential to the management of these assets, to the governance and management of these assets. So again, understanding how do families make decisions about professionalization? Which competencies does the family deploy and which other competencies are needed from outside to make an entrepreneurial family successful over time? These are interesting questions to me. And finally, identity. How to keep a family identity, a united, coherent family identity in a large and more diversified group of enterprises and investments. So again, we have a big question about identity at the family level and not just at the level of the family business. Some examples of questions, just to give you more practical and more direct indications about what is the potential in this line of research. If you think about efficiency, as I mentioned before, we want to understand how do different family business organizations or family boundary organizations, how are they can be understood from an efficiency, from an organizational and governance perspective. Can we develop typologies, taxonomies that help us understand what is the difference between a foundation, a museum, a family office, and create a broader framework for families to consider how to make decisions about which organizations they should create. And then second, what are the different governance configurations? How do you manage those different governance settings? And what are the mechanisms that allow you to minimize the cost, the transaction and the agency cost in these family boundary organizations. I think in the power perspective, there is a lot of work to be done. First of all, how does goal setting and goal formulation processes, how do they happen in family, ecosystems, in enterprising families? I have myself worked extensively in the topic of family business goals. One of my early papers when I was just a young scholar was goal setting in family firms, and I love that article because, and I still really am very proud of that work because we managed to really disclose some dynamics going on between different family members and non-family members in the family firm. But if I take that model and try to, replicate it in the setting of an entrepreneurial family, I think it doesn't apply. It needs to be extended, improved, changed. So please do that. Second, what is the political process, of goal formulation? How do political power position of different family and non-family members shape the goals of the family? I found I interacted recently with a family, a large family, which is in the something like 15th generation, a very old family which has sold a very famous business, which many of you know, is Valentino. Valentino, the luxury brand. This is the family who bought the brand early on and developed it into a large multinational. And then they sold it. They became, very powerful, also very wealthy. And the next generation group created a team to propose new goals for the senior generation. So they created a table on which they worked, and eventually they created a new family office whose main purpose is to do impact investments. So socially impactful, positive impact investments. So how do these goals formulation processes happen is very interesting. Sometimes it is the new generation who comes in, who pushes a new agenda. So it's interesting to see the power dynamics there. What is the role of non-family professionals? How do different coalitions emerge and are constituted in the family-owned, ecosystem? And also how these families recruit and hire board members, and other powerful positions in those companies. From a competence perspective, there is so much to be revealed because honestly, as family business researchers, I think we still have not grasped fully the potential of studying competencies in family businesses and beyond. So what are the unique resources that family boundary organizations have and they can exploit? What are the bundle of resources that enable families to maintain wealth? Maybe it's a specific configuration that allows the best performance in the long run. There is this new topic of ownership competencies, which is emerging, and I think it's very relevant. Nikolai Voss, Thomas Zellweger, Bill Schultz, they have worked recently in talking about ownership competencies from a property rights perspective and agency theory perspective. Take a look at that because I think it really offers us new ways of understanding decisions about, where to professionalize, how to professionalize the family business and other organizations. I won't read all of them, but in the identity side, I think also there are some interesting questions. For example, the hybridity of these organizations. They might be familial, maybe not entirely family, maybe social enterprises, maybe ventures. So I would like to, I believe it's very interesting to understand what happens when families work with other shareholders and other stakeholders to create value. How does generational depth influence the identity of the family boundary organization? What are the generational dynamics, and how do they unfold across the different organizations in the ecosystem owned by a family? Ultimately, I think we need really research that broadens the scope of family entrepreneurship research and puts the family at the center. And putting family at the center means asking how do those families make decisions that are not in the family business, but are on the top of the family business. I hope this is interesting. I hope this gives you some insights, some new ideas, hopefully. Uh, I'm very happy to take any question and debate with you or go in depth in some of these topics and maybe reflect together what might be, interesting avenues for future research. I wish I had a special issue to offer you guys, but I just submitted one proposal. So if I have a proposal accepted for a special issue on these topics, I will return to you and ask you to submit a paper.
Lovely. Excellent, Josip. That's brilliant. Questions? Do we want, I think Mahesh had put out a question. We have some of our FPM scholars also here, Josip. And Mahesh, can I ask you to switch on your video and ask your question? Mahesh, we can't hear you.
No, I cannot hear. But I think Mahesh wrote the comment in the chat, right?
He has
He was
written
asking,
something there. What is the proportion of industry that the companies belong to, the ones which are being liquidated?
Very good question. Is that correct, Mahesh? Do you want me to answer that question? I think he doesn't hear as well. But it's okay. I will try answering that one. And if Mahesh has another one, he can just write it in the chat.
Yeah.
Let me say the majority. Now there are from many sectors. Obviously, there are different reasons why the family business is sold or why entrepreneurs decide to sell part of the equity. Most commonly, these are very mature industries. Very mature industries where there is consolidation going on. So there are many buyers, industrial buyers, who are, buying multiple companies, aggregate them into a bigger entity. Which means in Italy, textile industry, luxury, apparel. Italy has a big tradition of manufacturing, which is in the last few years actually decreasing because big players are consolidating. So, for example, one big wave of acquisitions was made by just one of the major luxury brands in France. They have acquired something like 120 companies across Italy. All companies that are working ladder, that are working different components for the textile and for the luxury sector. Those are the companies that are most exposed. Why? One, because the rate of growth of these companies is very low. In the last few years, they have struggled to grow. Second is margins are decreasing because of increasing competition on price. Third is that the new generation family members don't find interest in those sectors. They study abroad, they study different things, and eventually they prefer to work in different industries, much more oriented towards service industries. So I would say to a very large extent, these companies are manufacturing companies in most traditional sectors, which are being sold.
Okay. And any proportions that
I don't have it at hand, Tulsi,
Okay, all right.
but let me tell you that more than 70% is traditional manufacturing
Manufacturing.
industries.
Okay.
Great majority, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can I ask one question, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. I'm Yashasvi Pancholi, and I'm doing my PhD in family businesses only. And sir, I would like to I would like to ask a generic question as an emerging scholar. This happens that when I try to reach out to the organizations, it's tough to get the data from the organization. And as we had this discussion just now, so the family offices and all these type of organizations or entities comes at a higher level, but when we talk about MSMEs where they don't have that much of content, that much of resources to have these family offices, how to operationalize these things there?
Very good question. Your name is Yashvi?
Yashasvi.
Yashasvi, very good. So I like to learn a little bit of pronunciation, improve every day. Very good question. It's a challenge, no? Well, it reminds me a lesson that I learned during my PhD program. I also wanted to speak with the families, and it was very difficult.
Yeah.
So I always tried, first of all, to find partners in the company, maybe some managers, some people who might help me get to the interest and attention of the family principals. Uh, Honestly, very often the younger generation is useful.
Yeah.
They understand better research, what we do, so that can help. Second is the power of networking. Um, that's something that I realized over time. It's once you get access, once you create a relationship with these guys, even if they are the superstars of the national economy, or if they are smaller entrepreneurs but very busy, then they start really, supporting you and so on. So one thing that I didn't do much during my PhD program, but I encourage younger people to do, is to go to events, to go and attend practitioner events when these people speak, or you will find them in the audience, and try to interact with them. Don't ask immediately the research.
Yeah.
Wait for that. Create a relationship first. Talk about what is interesting to them, right? And then step by step, create some trust. If you can do something for them, for example, once an entrepreneur, a very important entrepreneur in Italy, I encountered him in an event, and I just crossed my, roads and shake the hand and said, "Oh, very nice to meet you. Very nice speech. I'm a professor at Politecnico." And this guy said, "Oh, it would be interesting to have some data about these things that I told about." So I went back home, prepared, from the literature, I found some statistics, some evidence that I could share, and I sent him this information. I said, "I hope it is useful." And he invited me to go for lunch and help him understand his data.
Okay.
So, step by step, we created a relationship. Now, if I want to run 1,000 interview in their business, I just call. So family business, let me say this, is very useful for any family business scholar, especially in young stages of your work. Access to data is the most precious thing that a researcher has.
Yeah.
It's something that really deserves work. Today, even more than in the past, reviewers who are assessing papers, they really want you to have the data, to have very
Yeah.
strong data. And that's an asset that you can build, during the PhD. So I would really work very much on the relational side of this. I hope it is helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
If I
Also
may
because,
just add, Yashasvi, since you're you're a student, I think the key is patience.
Yeah,
yes,
indeed.
You will really have to be patient in that journey, because it's not going to happen at the flick of a finger that someone is just going to open their family business to you and share things with you. Natalia has a whole set of questions which I find very interesting, and if I can just read this out very quickly, what she's basically talking about is the family office different in non-Western contexts? Do they work in the same way? Do they have the same priorities as the European or the American family offices? And also, do we see the family boundary organizations of the sort that you have spoken about, the museums and the academies and the foundations and so on, in the non-Western context? Or do they do things differently? Do they value and engage in guarding different assets? I mean, what has been your experience there
very
yourself?
nice. Thank you, Natalia. Very, very, very nice questions. I think, yes, for sure, family office research particularly is biased very much, not only with the Western, but with the North American kind of approach, which is very different already from Italy, from the Southern Europe, very different from Europe in generally, not to speak about, East Asia, and not to speak about, other context, Africa, South America, Australia. One guy wrote me a few days ago asking for a PhD position in family offices. He was from Australia and he couldn't find an institution where, that topic would be appreciated. So yes, we need more work in this area. I think there is a unique opportunity to bring family entrepreneurship to the spotlight, in those contexts, by demonstrating that their way of working on the family office is different than in the West. So even the very definition of family office if you take the Western North American approach, is largely investments, right?
Yes.
Portfolio management and philanthropy. You have these two dimensions. Entrepreneurship is in a way very little addressed, whereas I think in Italy there is a lot of interest in that. I know about a large family who is now creating a vehicle, a family office to invest into the ventures of their family members. And I know another family office, a family venturing office here in Italy, which is specialized in investing like a VC, like a venture capital company. But with a family mindset, they only invest in Italian companies. They only invest in Italian major brands, right? Traditional brands. And their policy is never to shut down any production site, but always to give value to the territory. So very unique, no, as a VC approach. So I believe they don't work in the same way. I think there is a whole set of discoveries to be made. So Natalia, you also know how to position your research and so on. You imagine, I think an Academy of Management discovery paper would be a very good fit for these kind of topics, you know, to bring a really counterintuitive view on this phenomenon. I think they have different priorities. I was speaking with, especially with family businesses in emerging or underdeveloped economies. I was speaking with a friend from Africa who was telling me about the story of the family and the lack of institutions. That's one angle, because family offices rely on very solid institutions. You need a strong banking system, corporate law. You need a number of conditions to make that vehicle work. Which are not present in many countries, which have a lower level of governance development, let's say, and corporate governance law. So what happens is that in this context, families are creating family offices and family boundary organizations all around the world, using multiple jurisdictions to find references to their needs. So how do they create international structures? How do they bring them together at a large scale? In smaller families, let me say, family office also is another concept that in North America is very elitarian. No, when we think about family offices, we think about the Rockefellers, and the big names, the Gates, and these kind of families. Whereas, in all honesty, I believe the family office can be even more useful and helpful to small and medium family enterprises, because these families often find themselves at the threshold between being owner managers to becoming owners and having managers, working in the business. Typically, at that point, they start having some wealth and some activities beyond the family business. I think for these, in these scenarios, a family office can be extremely useful, because the concept, not the thing, but the concept of family office helps a family think about, okay, how can I approach these issues, right? At a high level, at a governance system level.
So, Josip, one question from my side, and this will also kind of address what Natalia is saying, at least in the Indian context, whatever, it's more anecdotal, but what we find is that a large number of these family offices kind of get set up when there is some kind of there is an event.
Yeah.
An event in terms of either the liquidation, as you spoke about, or a split, or some such thing. And then my question to you, Josip, is that it no longer then remains a boundary organization.
True.
Okay,
It becomes
it actually comes to take a center stage, and that could possibly be one of the other kind of evolution of your entrepreneurial family, as you call it, where instead of the family being the center and the boundaries being defined by these various kinds of entities, some of those entities move to the center.
Very
and
nice.
probably would support, multiple
Boundary organizations.
for all you know, even families for that matter.
Very nice one to see. Very interesting perspective, and it also, I agree with you. It's very interesting to look at the triggers, right? What leads a family? What are the motivations? It can be the sale, an exit. It could be just the accumulation over time. You accumulate wealth over time. There is one guy when I was working in the UK. A family entrepreneur came to me and said, "Josip, I have a big problem. I have 60 million pounds on the company's bank account."
Mhm.
So I thought, what problem is that? I would like to have that problem, right? But
Good problem.
it is a problem because it's a number that is heavy because it's on the denominator of your assets, which means your profitability, your return on asset is lower when you want to sell the business or want to find some investors, right? Because just the denominator is bigger and those money are not utilized, so they are unproductive. And so that's maybe another reason is surplus cash that you want to use outside the business.
Sure,
And
sure.
but also family conflicts, marriages, splits between brothers or sisters. So these might shape up very different family offices. That's a very interesting question. Thank you, Tulsi. And the
Yeah.
second is how do they move to the center or to the periphery? That's a very interesting insight.
Maybe we can discuss that, Josip.
That's a very good one. That's a very good one.
Yeah. Maria Jose has another question. Lovely to see you back again, Maria. Organizational goals is a very interesting topic given the trade-off between economic and non-economic goals. What do you think about the use of organizational goals approach to study green strategies in family firms?
Thank you, Maria Jose. Well, I must disclose that I have a paper running with Maria Jose and Fernando on
They
green.
presented it last time, Josip.
Exactly.
They presented it last time.
It was presented by them. So that's a great hook,
Yes,
let's
it was a
say.
lovely paper. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, we study by our own limitation is that we study family firms. Maria Jose, I just hope we get the review from that paper very soon because we are under review, but we are waiting forever. So I will not make names of any journal. But just to say, yes, if you look at green strategies and the new investments generally in family firms, this idea of a trade-off between economic and non-economic returns sounds reasonable, no? But if we broaden the perspective, then we can understand that, if you look at the boundary organization perspective, suddenly we can understand that families can also balance trade-offs between economic and non-economic goals at a higher level. So they might decide that a business is only concerned with financial goals. Why? Because they use another vehicle, another organization to pursue social goals. Maybe a foundation, maybe a philanthropic entity. So we might need to consider to a deeper extent how these trade-offs unfold within the family business, but also outside the family business. I believe that if the family has other boundary organizations, the pressures on the trade-off pressure of financial and social emotional wealth might be lower. So just testing that might be already quite an interesting insight for theory development. And of course, we know that family firms do things typically because of social emotional wealth protection. So again, the extent, the boundary conditions to that are very important. I think all of us who are working on social emotional wealth are looking for new ideas and how to expand the theory. So looking at trade-off within and outside the family business, I think is a very interesting one. So thank you, Maria Jose. If we get an R&R, maybe we can consider this as an extension to our paper already.
Great. I think we've kind of run out of time. Is there anyone else who would want to ask anything? We have another 3 minutes to go. Bharat Bhushan here, he's an XLRI FPM scholar. How does entrepreneurial resilience develop and become crucial in this age of the dying family boundary organization? I don't know whether it is dying.
I don't know dying, but let me try to answer. I think it's very much about entrepreneurial resilience because what is the life cycle of a family business? It can be 5, 10, 20 years, right? But it cannot be forever. All businesses, in a way, evolve, are merged, acquired. The oldest family businesses that we have in the world are very few. We're talking about hundreds, no, in the world population around the world. So clearly, resilience, continuity of entrepreneurship in a family really depends on the ability of the family to move beyond the family business. I told you about the Peugeot family. They moved from the salt and pepper dispensers on the table to the car making industry, right? So clearly, centuries
of entrepreneurship depend very much on the ability to reinvent and to relaunch the activity of the family. But nonetheless, there are new challenges of ensuring continuity, ensuring consistency with the past, right? So there are very interesting trends there. I think this is an interesting question we need research to answer.
Thank you all so much. We also, I think, have our Dean, Varun. Varun, do you want to say something? Do you have any question? All right. So thank you all so much. The research presentation series will continue. We have, as our next presenter, we have Emanuela Rondi. Can you just give me the dates, Tanashri? Somewhere in March. And then May we have Luca, Josip. Luca is coming in May.
Amazing. So
Yes.
many friends I'm seeing here.
Yes.
Please extend all the invitation also to me, Tusi, because
Yes,
if
absolutely.
I can, whenever I can, I will join you also
We
for
will do
as
that.
an
We will
attendee
do
with
that.
pleasure.
We also are the hosts of the STEP Conversation series this year. And on the 8th of February, we have Sarah Jack, Tanya Lipaho, and Andrea Calabro speaking on internationalization of small family firms on this very platform. So we would love to invite all of you again back on February 8th. And we continue.
Ma'am, March dates are 12th March and May is 9th May.
Okay, so 12th March and 9th May, we'll send you all the invites, and it would be lovely to have all of you back. And Josip, I'll see you hopefully, and Natalia and Maria and Lucija and the others as well sometime later this year. See you.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all so very much.
Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you for the attention.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for the
Nice to
invitation.
meet you.
All the
Bye-bye.
best.
Thank you.